It could be anyone, big or small, and I wouldn't want you to hold back from joining in this hour on the grounds of not thinking that you're important enough, because you are, and if you are, then whoever you want to say thank you to is as well. Michelle's in Spalding to kick things off. Michelle, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi James. I want to tell you a really cute story.
Excellent.
My husband is a part-time Tesco delivery driver. He started up his own business a year ago, and whilst he's setting that up, he still does a shift or two a week for Tesco. And he closed his business 2 weeks ago to work 7 days a week as a delivery driver for Tesco because they were desperate. And yesterday he went out on one of his routes and he came home and his face was beaming. And he showed me 2 handmade cards that had been left out for him by some kids, right? The front of this card says, "Thank you, Tesco driver," and there's the most awesome kid's picture of a Tesco delivery van, right, with Tesco and every little help's written on it. And on the inside it says, "Dear van driver, thank you for bringing us our food. I know you've been so very busy, so we made this card to say thank you, from Alfie and Freddie." And the second one is obviously from Freddie, who's a bit younger, but it's got a Tesco shop on the front of it, and on the back it's got a picture of my husband's van, and he wrote Freddie on it with a kiss. These are now on average. And
you're absolutely right. That's a banging tale, isn't it? And that meant so much to him.
It did. It made his night. I mean, he said to me as well, while he was driving around, he did a night shift last night, and he just delivered to one house just before 8 o'clock, and everybody came out and was clapping, and one of the women said to him, "Oh, this is for you as well, you know." And he said that it took him aback a little bit because he hadn't thought of it that way. He's just trying to help. But it was really lovely. And he came home and he went, "Just think, these kids are going to grow up and hopefully they won't value people on how much money they've got or how flash they are. They will see that actually it's who a person is that matters more." And it was just the way he sat there and said that. And I thought, you know what? If there is going to be a silver lining to this horrible, horrible thing, perhaps the way we view each other will, generationally.
That's a lovely thought. I mean, this notion of unskilled workers. It's astonishing to think that was merely weeks ago that some of us were profoundly offended by the rhetoric that goes along with that description or the thinking behind it. But you're right. I mean, almost everyone presumably has left that behind now and recognised that the amount of money you get paid cannot be the mark of how valuable you are to a society. And I agree with that. I mean, with the woman who stopped your husband last night, because all you have to do is imagine how we'd be getting on if they weren't there. So, imagine if there weren't any deliveries coming in. I've got vulnerable family members who get prioritised because of the vulnerabilities, and if they weren't having food delivered, then there'd be all sorts of extra problems added into the mix. And then for the rest of us, it means we don't have to go out. It means we don't have to run the risk of spreading an infection if we've got it, catching an infection if we haven't. And yeah, I don't know, but I think you might be onto something there. Just the younger generation just won't quite fall into the trap of thinking about jobs as beneath, but not beneath them. That's not quite the phrase I want, but as being, unimpressive or unvaluable. What's the word for unvaluable? It's not invaluable, is it? Because that means really, really valuable. What's the word? Devaluable? I don't know. We'll work it out. But that's really. What's his name? What's your husband's name?
John Paul Horton.
John Paul Horton. Respect to John Paul Horton, but respect as well to Alfie and Freddie. The problem with that is, I mean, my kids are still quite young. I don't know about you, but there are a lot of Alfies and Freddies out there at this stage in British naming history. But hopefully somebody will know which Alfie and Freddie it is that we're talking about, Michelle, and give them the thanks from you for putting a massive smile on your husband's face. I love that. That's really nice. Thank you.
I do have their surname. I didn't want to say it on the radio just in case.
We probably shouldn't do that. Just without Mum and Dad's permission. That's all. But they'll I'm sure they'll be able to work it out. That's a lovely one, isn't it? And a lovely illustration as well of exactly what I was trying to say in my sort of clumsy introduction. Now I know roughly what the next one is going to be. We'll take it first after the break, and it sort of goes to the other extreme, wherein people that are very, very richly rewarded by society, some might argue that they're too richly rewarded by a society that doesn't reward people like delivery drivers enough, but that's not the point. The point of this hour is if somebody has improved your life this week in a way that is really, really important to you, and perhaps in a way that they didn't have to do, although that's not a qualifying criteria, because I'm very, very keen to continue thanking people who are improving the rest of our lives by doing their jobs. But if you didn't have to do it, then that is certainly grounds for inclusion as well. Karen's in Beaconsfield. Karen, what would you like to say?
Hello, good afternoon. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the comedian Michael McIntyre. He set up a GoFundMe page in order to raise money for food banks, which I happily donated to. And in return, he was randomly selecting people to FaceTime from his home. So I nominated my medic son and his paramedic girlfriend, Jodie, and they were simply thrilled to be chosen and FaceTimed yesterday by Michael.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So I just thought, what a brilliant initiative. You know, he's stuck at home like the rest of us, and just using his time to create incredible amounts of money. I think they raised something like £37,000 for food banks within 5 hours.
And and which he doesn't have to do. That's the point, isn't it? It's all very well saying, well, it's all right for him, he's loaded. But you know, people don't have to do these things any more than James McAvoy had to give 275 grand of his own money to the PPE fundraiser that we covered earlier in the week. Do you want to know some top trivia about Michael McIntyre that is surprisingly underreported? And I am going to kill you if you already know this.
Go on.
Just before things went absolutely bonkers for him, I mean, literally almost weeks before things went absolutely bonkers for him, he was doing swing shifts here at weekends.
Was he? No, I didn't know
swear,
that.
He absolutely was. People don't believe me. You have to sort of dig into the archives to prove it. But he didn't have a regular slot. A couple of producers here really liked him. I imagine he was brilliant on air. I never even heard him myself. But he was doing weekend swing shifts on LBC about weeks before he became. I think he did a Saturday night at the Palladium or something, and everything suddenly went nuts for him. But you know. God, I bet he looks back and wonders what might have been, eh? If only he'd been able to cut the mustard on LBC, he could have been a real star by now, Michael McIntyre. That's a lovely story, Karen. Thank you so much. 19 after 12. Marcus is in High Wycombe. Marcus, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
Very good, mate. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm ringing to pay thanks to people who essentially are my colleagues. I work in the film industry in the art department, designing film sets. I'm not that useful at this moment in time, but a lot of the people who make the props, a lot of the people who make like the street signs, the graphics, things like that, have all turned their 3D printers, their cutting mats, everything like that, to making visors and 3D printing stuff like PPE for the NHS when there's been shortages. And this is a group of people who, for the most part, have been overlooked by the financial measures to help people when our industry collapsed two weeks ago. You know, we've got no help. These people have turned every single bit of equipment that they have got, dug through their vans, dug through their boxes to see if they've got any face masks, any eye goggles, or literally getting the materials they've got, perspex, foam, and what have you, to physically make visors to send to hospitals. And it's truly like an industrial scale that has been being churned out by the various small workshops in and around London.
That's so good to know. That's so good to know, because they've got the kit. But of course, again, as with even someone like Michael McIntyre with our last caller, the people are doing things they don't have to do because they know that it will make a difference, and that's just the way they're made, isn't it? The people, not the masks.
Well, no, but you know, because we have so much stuff. In the film industry generally, we have crates and crates of stuff that goes overlooked or gets carried from job to job. And I think people have just dug into their garages, dug into their vans, and just gone, yeah, I've got 2 boxes of face masks, so that can.
What do you need? Oh, hang on, I can do that. Well, we can do that, can't we? We can knock one of those up. I love that. I love that. And
can I say the name of one particular company that's been coordinating it? Data Reprographics in Ashford, near Shepperton Studios, have been coordinating the art department via Facebook, sending out packages of materials to people who work in the film industry normally, who are locked in their houses, and just said, if you've got a cutting mat, we'll send you the materials. Here's the template. This is how you make them. And it's been Data Reprographics near Shepperton Studios in Ashford that have been really coordinating that effort.
Great stuff. And understandably, and I suppose rightly, some of these things won't be getting anything like the coverage or the attention that we might like them to get, because there is so much else going on, which is why there's a breach for them to step into. So I'm delighted that you've been able to give them a heads up here. Thank you, Marcus. 22 minutes after 12. Linda is in Redbridge. Linda, who would you like to thank?
Oh, hello, James. Hi.
Hello, Linda. Very welcome.
Calling because my dad is currently residing in a mental health unit under section. He's been there for over 5 months. He has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and he's been incredibly unwell over the past, 18 months, 2 years, really.
Okay.
And things got a lot worse, and he unfortunately was, sectioned. It's been incredibly difficult for us as a family, and what sort of kept us going on an emotional level, and him, I believe, in his own particular way, is the fact that we visit him twice a week, and I think he definitely derives some comfort from seeing familiar faces, even if he's not maybe 100% sure who we are. But because we've not been able to visit, the ward has been closed for nearly 3 weeks now. Obviously, his agitation and aggression levels have increased dramatically because he doesn't understand why we're not visiting. And I wanted to just give a shout out really to the staff, the nursing staff and the carers that are just trying their best to keep him and the others, they're under, in some sort of, comfort, and because it must be incredibly difficult, because suddenly the external support network has been taken away through no fault of anybody's, really.
So they've got a tough job at the best of times, but as you quite rightly point out, this has made it 100 times tougher. Do you want to give us any details, or are you happy just leaving it vague like that?
Yeah, it's St Margaret's Hospital. It's the mental health unit, St Margaret's Hospital in Epping in Essex, and my dad's actually in Kitwood ward, and they've been absolutely amazing.
It means so much, doesn't it, to know that he's in, however bad things are, that he's in good hands. It must be a great comfort to you.
Yeah, it's just so sad that we can't even speak to him, although one of the senior staff said she's going to try at the weekend to set up a video call for him and my mum. They've been married for over 55 years, and they haven't been, first time they haven't seen each other for 3 weeks in all those years, and it's tough on my mum, and I'm trying to support her. But my dad's terribly confused, so hopefully they'll get to see each other at least over the phone.
Well, fingers crossed for that one. Lovely stuff, Linda, and I'm glad that you got through today to do that, because it's really important. 25 minutes after 12. Stephen is in Wandsworth. Stephen, who would you like to thank?
Hi, James. First of all, I'm glad you're feeling better, mate.
Thank you. I'm dreading a relapse, though. Everything you read one article and you think, I'm over the worst. You read another one and you think, I might not be here on Monday.
Well, you can't do that, mate, because I think you're keeping most of us sane, to be honest.
Very kind.
It's a bit of a weird one. I want to thank someone who normally takes money from my landlord. I live by Spencer Park in Wandsworth with my girlfriend. We had a knock on the door yesterday. I was like, where the hell's that? And my landlord, do you mind if I mention the name?
No, that's fine.
Burntwood Estates. Basically, they run a block of 12 apartments. Knock on the door, and they've got a hamper company to deliver to every apartment. A hamper with food and all sorts of good stuff, tin stuff, out of nowhere, which I thought was really nice. Something that we didn't expect, these people that take your money every month out of nowhere delivering hamper. And also, some of the people in the block are like in their 90s, so it's just literally manna from heaven. So, yeah, I thought that was amazing.
That is really special, actually. And just because they can.
Yeah, exactly. Let's face it, they're not short of a bob or two, but they don't need to do it. it's like you said before, these people like the Michael McIntyre story, they don't need to do these things, but they choose to do it out of the goodness of their heart, which I think, and as I spoke to your researcher earlier on, he said, do you think this has brought out the best in people? And I think, this situation has made people realise how much they need other people.
Yeah, and I guess they've got the kit in place, haven't they? They've got the they'll have their staff still out and about, and so somebody somewhere with a surfeit of goodwill has thought, well, if they're doing this and doing that, why don't we get them to do this as well? That would just be lovely.
It was just a lovely surprise. Actually, what
was the most surprising thing in? Hang on a minute, before you do that, what was the most surprising thing in a hamper? I mean, a different kettle of fish entirely, but I get sent a couple of hampers at Christmas, and there's always one or two things in there that you do double takes when you pull them out. Was there anything in there that is unlikely to see the light of?
Absolutely was, and it's one that I might need to use at the very last ditch. Was a Fray Bentos chicken pie.
Oh, you see, you've gone a bit controversial now. That used to be my Sunday lunch in my student days. A Fray Bentos pie with a tin of mushy peas on top, all the major food groups. Stephen, that's lovely. What was the thing you wanted to add?
You had Polly on earlier on. He's a good friend of mine, actually. I just wanted to reiterate what he was saying. Yeah, I've known him for years. Basically, I used to play in a band many years ago, and there's a whole big band family all around the country. And what he's doing with Casey Duggan with this front row thing is fantastic. It's giving people an opportunity to express themselves musically or whatever, and also it gives people things to do other than look at the television or eat pot noodles, if you know what I mean. It's a really, really good thing they're doing, yeah.
Most of my favourite foods you're denigrating in the course of a single phone call to LBC here, Stephen. It's quite an achievement.
I do apologise. But no, I do a show on it myself. Can I mention the show I do on it?
Yeah, you have to now. Go on.
I do, really. It's called #CoronaVimprov. It's a half hour, 2 o'clock on Facebook, where people come in with ideas, be it names of books or people's places and things, and I just improvise a song over half an hour. And it's fun and it's a bit silly, and it just keeps the mood up for half an hour, Dave. Thank you so much for the job you're doing.
No, thank you. I know there's no need for that. I'll see you in a few weeks for that. We'll have a Fray Bentos dinner. 28 minutes after 12 is the time. Julia is in East Grinstead. Julia, who would you like to thank?
I would like to thank, please, my husband, most of all. I've also got another huge list of everyone, but mostly my husband, because I don't
What's he done?
Either of us. Everything, absolutely everything. I am disabled. I've got nerve damage in my lungs and asthma, so I'm not allowed outside the front door.
Scary times.
It is, but I've not felt scared at all because I've got him looking after me. And he does everything. He wakes me up with a cup of coffee. He does all the shopping and the decontamination of the shopping when it comes in. I mean, it's just every minute of every day he's doing something to make it easier for me. And I don't think either of us acknowledge how wonderful he is.
Oh, that's nice. That's lovely. What's his name? Do you want to tell me? You don't have to.
It's Basil.
Basil
Bottler, if you want to plug for his podcast.
Yes, why not?
But he does comedy podcasts. I come from the lineage of the Stand Comedy Club in Scotland.
Oh, wow,
and
yes.
The support of the comedy community, just in Britain alone, as well as worldwide, has been astonishing. It's really, I want to thank each and every person who's sent me a video of a cat or a GIF or a silly message. I want to thank all of the people who are doing live shows, like the Stand does one on Saturday nights live. There's a place called Excess Malarkey that do Tuesday nights. There's people who are doing streams on Twitter of them playing games. There's this brilliant one by someone called Steve Cumberland. And there's a guy who's a storyteller called Gav Cross, and he is friends with Santa Claus, and he has recorded a message from Santa Claus to all of the children.
Oh, how lovely.
It's worth looking up. Look for Gav Cross Storyteller. If you know anyone with children or a child in their heart, look at that story.
That's lovely.
But it's just a lovely community to be part of, and it's like...
and it's suffering as well. I mean, I know, I've got a few mates in the comedy community, and I know they've had an absolute shocker because, of course, they've gone almost overnight, like all performers, from having a relatively reliable income, if not necessarily a huge one, to having no income at all. And you're right, the Stand Comedy Club is a great force for good in the world generally, never mind the world of comedy. My friend Nick Revel, who's a supreme performer, is a huge fan of all the work that they do. And of course, with the Edinburgh Festival being called off this week, some of these issues become ever more acute. Julia, that was lovely. Thank you for that. It's a lovely opportunity, this. I probably should have clarified a little more that it's an attempt to keep the spirit of last night's clap for our NHS workers alive, but obviously we could fill the whole show with people saying thank you to NHS workers, but this is an opportunity to say thank you to people who aren't getting a public clap up and down the country. It's probably clear enough already. Yeah, but look at some of the texts that have come in during our Friday thank yous. Could you give a thank you to Andrew Lloyd Webber? Okay, he has been posting videos on Twitter of himself playing music, answering questions and doing friendly playoffs with people like Lin-Manuel Miranda and Nile Rodgers, as well as regular people at home. His Twitter feed is filled with music and pure joy, writes Ben, which gives me immense happiness and I'm incredibly grateful for it. Slightly different end of the musical spectrum. I see the 1975 have just dropped a new single, which counts as extremely good news in my world and indeed my house. David Bexley says, I'm a paramedic and would like to thank the public. That's nice, Dave, actually, very thoughtful. All that have followed the government's advice and stayed home. Everyone who has said thank you and taken part in the clapping, and all that have very kindly made donations. For everyone who has ignored the government's advice and is still wandering around when they should not be, shame. Gavin's in Jersey, and he very poignantly writes, I hope you're well. My dad is currently terminally ill. If he catches corona, he will likely die. I'm away from the UK and currently unable to return even for the funeral, should there be one. Mother is an NHS nurse and is still having to work whilst putting him at risk. She's amazing, but it's causing a lot of stress. That's terrible to hear, Gavin, but important, I think. And Christian in Bramley says, council workers get very little mention. My girlfriend works from home sorting benefits. DWP workers, actually, mate. I'm going to put them on the list myself, because one thing we discovered on, I think, yesterday's programme, which was surprising, I think, given the reputation that the universal credit system has previously to this crisis, but the DWP really does seem, the staff at the DWP really do seem to have put in a very, very big shift on dealing with this unprecedented amount of new applications. But Christian goes on, she works from home sorting benefits. I work a hard shift pattern, making sure places are secure in Leeds. Also do a few shifts on CCTV. Council workers normally get roasted on Facebook, as we're all supposed to be layabouts, according to many. It's a good point, Christian. It's picked up by a few people, actually. There was a postal worker as well who got in touch earlier to point out that, you know, it's great, but hopefully you'll remember how you currently value us next time we ask for your help or support in a crisis for our industry, or even, God forbid, in an industrial dispute. It's a bit of a pet subject of mine, the demonisation of public sector workers over the years, but hopefully this crisis will mark something of a sea change. We'll have to wait and see. Ben's in Rudgwick near Horsham. Ben, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thanks for taking my call.
You're very welcome.
I work for a domiciliary care company. Can I mention who they are?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, it's a company called Caremark, and I work as a regional support manager for the South East, and I just want to do a big shout out to all the care support workers out there who are on the front line, who are working their absolute socks off, as well as then don't forget those who are working in the offices, the field care supervisors and the care coordinators and the care managers. They do an exceptional job.
What is work like at the moment?
It's extremely busy. As you can imagine, we're taking a lot of hospital discharges as well, so our workload's increasing. But there's a real sense of togetherness in our offices, and they're doing an exceptionally good job.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad we got that one on board. And it would be true across your sector, of course, not just your company. An awful lot of people who, again, I'm afraid will have to file under, people who should be getting more recognition, more appreciation, more admiration than they ordinarily get, at least perhaps getting it for now. Paul's in Birmingham. Paul, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. Long-term listener, first-time caller.
Welcome.
My sister Bernie is a freelance hairdresser, makeup artist. She's obviously finding it hard, like some of your other callers earlier today. Obviously being self-employed, income has just dropped totally. But she did think to herself, what could she do now? So out of her own heart, she rung up the local hospital. And when this is all through, she's offered to do hair and makeup for any one of the workers who needs it for free after this period when it's safe to do so.
That's nice.
And the hilarious thing, there's a funny story here. The hilarious thing is that when she rung the press officer was crying when she told her, and she says, what she was thinking, what's she crying for? Is she perhaps ill at the moment, or upset about something? And she said no. She said the public have been great, but they've been great. We've given us loads and loads of chocolates, but we've been getting loads of that. That lifts their spirits on a day-to-day basis, but she thought this offer would lift their spirits after this period. So she's going to go down there when it's safe to do so, when we all get through this, and that'll lift their spirits after a difficult time. So just...
what a lovely idea. Well, Bernie, did you say her name was?
Bernie. Yeah,
Bernie. Well done, yeah. Bernie. What business name does she trade under? Does she have one of those hilarious names for a freelance hairdresser, or does she just trade under a normal name?
No, it's an agency thing. She probably wouldn't like me going into too much detail.
No. Well, that's why I know you're in good faith. You're not cynically attempting to get some sort of free advertising. You're just a good brother, looking out for your sister, who is looking out for others, which is as it should be. And it's funny you mention the person in the hospital bursting into tears, because I've seen a few things about shelf stackers. One in particular, one story really, as I've said to you a few times this week, you just never know which ones are going to grab you by the feels, do you, and which ones are not. And there was one tale of a shelf stacker in a supermarket who, people are still behaving in such an ignorant fashion, and some of the reason for that will be all the herberts in my industry who are still trying to get a few quid and clicks out of suggesting that we're overreacting, or we should just let a few old people die in order to protect the economic situation of selected survivors. But there's still a sort of inbuilt ignorance rather than a learned ignorance, perhaps. And it's the people in supermarkets that are at the brunt of it quite often. There was one story, it wasn't a shelf stacker actually, it was it on the show that this happened, or did I pick it up somewhere else? It doesn't matter. I mean, it's come into my orbit either way. And it was, someone just asked the young woman on the checkout if she was okay. And she burst into tears. And she said, no one's asked me that all week. No one's asked me how I am all week long. And you sort of think they must be very worried, because they're going home every night, and no one really wants to be in that level of physical contact with countless members of the public at a time when we're all being advised to avoid that kind of contact completely. So again, a job. I thought the first call of this hour was so powerful when she just suggested that after those kids had done a little thank you card, Alfie and Freddie, for her husband, John Paul, the idea that it'll change the way what we value in the workforce and the workplace is a little bit silly, isn't it, when you think about it? And to think that a month ago we were really on the brink of weaponising that idea of not offering any value or proper respect to people because they didn't earn enough money. Quite an incredible potential sea change underway. I wonder if that's why Priti Patel is keeping such a low profile, because that whole rhetoric of unskilled workers that she essentially chose to go in on hard and first as Home Secretary has really been... I mean, some of us knew it was rancid from the start, but anybody who was labouring under any illusions about why it was such a despicable way to treat people is presumably not suffering from those illusions any longer. Friday thank yous underway. John's in Brighton. Slight change of tone. John, who would you like to say thank you to?
Hi, James. Thanks for taking my call. I'd like to thank a good friend of mine who is currently... sorry about my stutter. He's currently doing a virtual climb of Everest at home on his stairs. He's climbed over 7,500 metres so far. And he's raising money for the Trussell Trust because food has been stolen from the donation trolleys in the supermarkets.
Oh, are you serious? I've missed that. I mean, it's not a massive surprise, but I suppose they've got so much going on in the supermarkets that they won't be keeping as close an eye on things as possible. How high? Forgive me for not knowing this, John. How high is Mount Everest?
I think it's 8,950-ish metres.
So he's nearly there then.
He is nearly there. Yeah.
No, and is he filming it? I mean, how do we know he's telling the truth? Is he filming the whole thing on Facebook? Has he got?
You can see the pain on his face. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's quite incredible. And is he doing it on all fours, or is he just walking up and down the stairs?
Sometimes on all fours. Yeah.
This has cheered me right up. I don't know why. That's like the definition of a man who's stuck at home thinking, I really want to do something, but I can't think of anything to do. But quite how he leapt from I can't think of anything to do to thinking, I know, I shall climb Mount Everest using the medium of my own stairs. That just makes me love him. He sounds like an absolute legend. Will you let us know if we can give him a boost, or stay on the line, because I don't want to embarrass him or draw attention to him that he wouldn't welcome. But stay on the line, have a quick word with Robbie and see if we can give a shout out to him. If not today, then on Monday, by which time he probably will have finished. But we could still throw a few more quid in the pot. We just need to do a little bit of what do they call it? Due diligence, John. But how lovely of you as well to think of him, because that one's really taken me from the blind side. What a lovely tale. Good luck to John, the climber, and thank you to John in Brighton. I to make light of anybody's situation, but if you've had a mild dose of the lurgy, as I have had, then the stairs are actually the place where you most feel it and most realise it. So I've got time for that. That's lovely. Gary's in Widnes. Gary, what's going on?
Hello, James. How's the family?
Very well, thank you, Gary. How nice of you to ask.
Good. Because when you feel you're ill, it's your loved ones. You think, oh my God, if I've got it, I might be giving it to them, and that really worried me. Anyway, that's by the by. James, how do you get your milk?
Now I'm going to shoot your fox here, or spoil your fun slightly, because okay. We do have our milk delivered in glass bottles, but only for the last 12 months or so, since Greta Thunberg woke us up, a lot of us up, to the amount of plastic we were getting through and throwing away every day. But carry on.
Yeah, well, it's a shout out really, and I feel a bit ashamed because we've had a milkman. I've been married 45 years, and we've always had our milk delivered by a milkman. This current address, we've been here over 30 years, and we've always had our milk delivered here. And it's someone you take for granted. And at a time when people were saying, what do you still have a milkman for? For goodness sake, just go to the supermarket. It's cheaper, it's more convenient. Yeah. And I've been saying to the wife, I said, Jean, what the hell are we doing this for? And she said, well, he's a lovely lad. You know what I mean? We're in quite a big road, a long road, and we're literally one of only two who he delivers to in this road. And then when he came for his money last night, and he pulled up, and I went, oh, crikey, here's the milkman. And I just thought, wow, thank God we never dispensed with the services. And you know what? I'm really ashamed. He's been doing it. He's been our current milkman for 20 years, and I don't even know his name. How remiss is that? You know why? Because I've been taking it for granted. But I can give a shout.
Well, no, also because you're still away with the fairies when he's dropping the milk off on your doorstep. Don't beat yourself up too much. I mean, you know, you probably.
We used to have, where I'm from, Liverpool, they used to have someone called the knocker up, who was the guy who woke you up in the morning, you know, to go to work.
Back a while, that, Gary. Gary.
Well, yeah. So he's been our knocker up. The unfortunate thing, he's regular as clockwork. You know what time he brings the milk? 4:30.
Go on.
Now, honestly, and you can hear the tinkle. You can still hear the tinkle, and I'd just like to give a shout out. For God's
to all the milkmen, because you still don't know his name, so we can use him as the emblem of milkmen and milkwomen everywhere.
Yeah, and we couldn't do without him. And just one final point: how are we managing in these straitened times to do without hedge fund managers and think tank spokesmen? The wife's desperate. She said, that American girl from the Adam Smith Institute, I haven't seen her on the telly for ages. How
will we ever survive? How will we ever survive? Well, it's very thoughtful of you and the wife to be bearing in mind the plight of that particularly persecuted section of society in these, as you say, in these straitened times. Gary, you're a man after my own heart. All of the professional spokespeople for the idea that we need smaller government and we shouldn't be spending taxpayers' money on things that might not benefit people who aren't already rich are strangely quiet at the moment. But unfortunately, like Japanese knotweed, I'm not sure that they've been eradicated. Mind how you go, Gary, and you're right about the dairies and the milkmen. It is it's a win-win actually. It's only a few pence more, not even necessarily always that, depending on where you buy milk from. But the environmental impact is incomparable. Alistair is in Dunbarton. Alistair, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
Pretty good, mate. What's on your mind?
I'd like to. I work at a local care home, and I can't go to work now there's been 12 weeks I'm going to be off because I'm having to isolate due to medical reasons within the household. Okay. And I'd like a big thank you to everybody that's still going into work and still putting themselves at risk for all of our clients. I'd also like to say a thank you to the families of our clients, because it's came through in the local paper that there might be people in the home that have got coronavirus, and we've came under attack from the local newspaper because of it. And
just because people might have caught it? Just because people might have caught it? Well, that's ridiculous.
And they've been giving us a hard time for a long time, the local paper. But I'd like to thank all the relatives of the people that we work with and that stay there. All the families have been online and they've been showing their support and backing us up. And I'd like to give a big thank you to them.
Oh, that's
thank
lovely.
you to all the people that are still making their way into work. And I wish I could
they're both lovely, but the idea that the local newspaper decided to have a bit of a swing, and it was the families of the people you look after that started swinging back. That's a bit special, that, isn't it, Alistair?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was really good.
I'm glad you've done that. I'm glad you. Do you want to go into any more detail, or are you happy leaving it there?
No, just
don't do anything you might regret.
People think that we go in there and we just do our job, and it's like being a carer is like maintaining a piece of machinery, and you don't really think about it, but you do. You become really emotionally attached to the people that you work with, and you do genuinely care and love them. You get to know them over years and years, and then when they eventually pass away, it's really hard. And sometimes these people don't have anybody with them and any family there with them when they go, and it's you that has to do it. And I just like to highlight that and give a big show of appreciation to the folk that are still going into work and doing that.
Beautifully put. And you know what I have to do now?
Go to Sheila.
Nearly close the show. Before I close the show, you clever clogs, I have to thank you for what you do, because you may not realise this, but you'll have just touched a lot of people in a way that they weren't expecting to be touched. A lot of people who've got family in care homes, for example. Just to hear you describe there the emotional investment that you have in the job that you do will have meant the world to them, Alistair. So thank you not only for the work that you do, but also for just offering up completely unintentionally such astonishing comfort to a lot of families who'll be very worried about their families at the moment, their family members at the moment, and unable to visit them themselves. To hear you just describe that emotional investment in the work, I know will have meant the world to them. So mind how you go, Alistair, all right?
It does. Thanks very much.
You take care. And as Alistair quite rightly predicted, it is almost time to close the show. Everyone's a producer these days. Before I do, a couple more. Please give a massive thank you to the child protection social workers who are still out there on the front line protecting our vulnerable children. Shout out, says Rich, who's up in Home First on bus. He writes, rural bus crews, South Pennine drivers out there filling in services that are vital to the ops and to others. And Mickey even in Croydon, thanking all the dustmen and women week in, week out, doing their job. No one seems to appreciate the horrendous job that they do. I'll tell you this, it probably gets me another virtue signalling badge, but you can tip them again. You don't just have to tip them at Christmas. You can leave an envelope out for the dustmen and women in this particular time, if you're lucky enough to be in a position to do so. He adds, I'm a disabled person. I simply wouldn't be able to cope without their wonderful services. And I'd like to thank my friend who drove past the house and stopped for our 3-year-old girls to wave at each other. Birthdays soon, each getting a framed photo of them together, trying to keep these little friendships alive. And perhaps a little bit more obviously, the last one to the Citizens Advice Bureau, working in their thousands from home, managing the national help to claim the programme for universal credit on behalf of DWP.